Diana Renaud and Michelle Klippenstein. And today they are going to be talking to us about motivational interviewing and culturally safe communication strategies. Diana Renaud is our Director of Neurodevelopmental Services with the Rehabilitation Center for Children. Diana has had the opportunity to work alongside a MINT trainer for several years and has developed a passion for motivational interviewing. She supports SSCY Center staff in a monthly community of practice meeting where she enjoys exploring different aspects and skills associated with motivational interviewing. In addition to finding this style of communication very useful in her day-to-day work in health and social services, Diana has enjoyed a positive outcome when utilizing this style of communication when having those difficult conversations with family members. Michelle Klippenstein is completing her practicum here at SSCY Center with her Master's of Social Work. So she's completing her placement at the Rehabilitation Center for Children, and Michelle is currently enrolled in the Master's of Social Work program with Indigenous specialization at the University of Victoria. Michelle is a proud member of Poplar River First Nation, located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. She is currently the Southern Chiefs Organization Jordan's Principal Coordinator at SSCY Center. Michelle has been introduced to motivational interviewing since being at SSCY Center and has attended several practice and community webinars. She has researched culturally sensitive motivational interviewing practices to include Indigenous perspectives. So welcome both. Thank you so much for joining us today. There's a lot of interest in this topic, and I will turn this over to you. Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Michelle Klippenstein, and I'm happy to be here this morning and co-present with Diana. So we're going to just get into it. First off, we want to introduce the topic that we're going to be discussing this morning. Diana, do you want to give a brief overview before?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So this morning we want to provide an overview of motivational interviewing, which is a style of communication developed by clinical psychologists William R. Miller and Stephen Rolnick. So this style of communication is particularly useful during change conversations, but there are parts of it that can fit in all different kinds of conversations. So we hope you'll find it really helpful. And as Liz mentioned in my bio, it can also be very useful, not just in client and provider conversations, but also in conversations that you may be having with children or your spouse or other family members, friends, colleagues. There's just lots of very respectful and kind and effective components of it. So we hope that you'll find this useful, not just perhaps in your work life, but perhaps in your personal life as well. This is a really high level overview. It's not meant to be a training in particular. We are going to look at pieces such as the MI spirit, change talk, the MI principles, and we refer to OARS, which is an acronym which we'll get into more later, but about open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. Michelle and I will also do a bit of a role play so that you guys can see a little bit of MI in action. And then we also want to talk a little bit more specifically about the use of motivational interviewing across cultures and Indigenous perspectives in motivational interviewing. So we hope that'll all be useful to you. Do want to preface this by saying that neither Michelle nor I are MINT trained. MINT stands for the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, and they're a fantastic organization that trains trainers that internationally to be able to do a really great job. This is not considered a training session, but just kind of an overview, and hoping that it might pique your interest. So in the future, if you have the opportunity to get involved in some more formal MI training, that you might be interested in doing so.
And just to also state that MI is not meant to replace the style skills that you already use when you with those you're working with, but may give you some ideas for ways to try things differently if when you feel like you're getting stuck in conversations. So what is motivational interviewing? It's a guiding style of communication that sits between following good listening and directing, giving information and advice. MI is designed to empower people to change by drawing out their own meaning, importance, and capacity for change, helping them to resolve their ambivalence. MI is based on a respectful and curious way of being with people that facilitates the natural process of change and honors client autonomy. Just want to mention that this slide picture we're referencing from Google as a stock photo.
Thanks, Michelle. I think we can go to the next one.
So the spirit of motivational interviewing, there's 4 aspects of the spirit of MI. The first I want to acknowledge is partnership and collaboration. MI is a collaborative process. The MI practitioner is an expert in helping people change, but people are the experts in their own lives. Acceptance, the MI practitioner takes on a non-judgmental stance, seeks to understand the person's perspectives and experiences, expresses empathy, highlights strengths, and respects a person's right to make informed choices. And through compassion, the MI practitioner actively promotes and prioritizes clients' welfare and well-being in a selfless manner. And evocation, people have within themselves resources and skills needed for change. MI draws out that the person's priorities, values, and wisdom to explore reasons for change and support success. MI is about change conversations, but we believe that bringing the spirit of MI into all conversations is positive and effective.
Thanks, Michelle.
So with motivational principles, we have the acronym RULE for resist, understand, listen, and empower. So resist is writing reflex. Resist the writing reflex, sorry. Instinctive response is to fix the problem and make things right. Diana, do you have an example of resist?
Yes, thanks, Michelle. So resisting the writing reflex is really a very important component of motivational interviewing. And one of the things that it does for us as providers is it takes us off the hook when it comes to feeling responsible for coming up with a solution or kind of fixing the issue. It's not our job to fix problems or fix people. It really becomes our job to help guide individuals to their own understanding and their own solutions and their own plan for change. Sometimes we have a lot of information based on perhaps our experience, our education, that we kind of want to jump right in there and give people the information that they need to kind of fix things. But motivational interviewing really teaches us to kind of slow down because we are not the expert in our client's life. Even though we may have some information to share, there's a time and there's a way to do that that is most effective. And we'll kind of explore that a little bit later on in a video that we're going to, a short video that we're going to show, as well as some of the role play that we're going to do. But it really is kind of holding back from kind of jumping in. I think some of you may have had experience where you jump in with solutions and try to fix issues. And we just find time and time again that it's not always effective. And more so than that, sometimes it can actually backfire on us and creates some discord or resistance from our clients because we know change is hard. And when we simplify it by offering a solution, it can make people feel really resistant to what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. So so we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but that's a really important component of MI.
Next one is understand their motivation. Seek to understand their values, needs, abilities, motivations, and potential barriers to changing behaviors, and to be curious.
Yeah, being curious is really so important, and it's about just asking questions and trying to be where the client is at, which is just all about what MI stands for, is being very family centered, being very child centered, client centered, and just really understand and put yourself in their shoes and try to see what they're bringing to the table and what they need from you. So very client focused.
Next one within motivational principles is listen with empathy, listen to understand instead of listening to respond.
Yeah, we often kind of talk about we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should use those respectively. Oftentimes we just are wanting to respond, we're wanting to listen, wanting to impart our knowledge, and we're so quick to jump in with that, whereas we really just need to listen and listen for that understanding. So such an important piece.
And the last one, empower them. Work together to set achievable goals and to identify techniques to overcome barriers.
Absolutely. So important. We're not always going to be with folks. It's really important that we help individuals develop the skills, knowledge, confidence that they need to kind of go forth and live their best life. So empowering them to overcome barriers is the best thing we can do.
Thank you. So for the acronym of OARS, OARS stands for open-ended questions, affirming, reflective listening, and summarizing. So the first one, open-ended questions, is asking open-ended questions allows for exploration, which strengthens the client-practitioner partnership and sets the foundation in evoking motivation to change.
Thanks, Michelle. Open-ended questions are just so important. If anybody has teenage children, you're going to know when we ask closed-ended questions, that's what we get. We just get very short, quick answers, and we just get such richer information by asking open-ended questions. And we have to be really clear that the questions that we're asking are for our own interest and what we need as providers to hear from clients. But we're also helping to ask questions that clients need to kind of hear and understand themselves. When they hear themselves talking, it gives them a lot more insight, and they can really hear things a lot stronger. So a couple examples of open-ended questions might be, help me understand, why is this so important to you? Why is this goal, really important to you at this time? And as they're answering that question, it's really helping to strengthen their reasons for change and their motivation for change. And that's what this is all about. It's not why we want them to change, it's their reasons for change. So we can be really strategic in our open-ended questions. Asking people, for example, what do you know about making that change? Have you had some previous experience with this topic? Whatever the topic is, it can be anything from getting a child prepared for school, whether it's exercising more, whether it's getting to bed earlier, but just really eliciting from people what they already know about this stuff. And we do that through our open-ended questions. You can get some really rich information.
Okay, for affirming statements that highlight a client's strengths, abilities, and positive efforts allow the practitioner to help the client gain self-efficacy and confidence, key attributes to drive internal motivation and desire to change. The most productive affirmations are client-focused with the use of you more than I.
Thanks, Michelle. So affirming is just so important to help, again, build some confidence and empower folks. One of the things about affirming, which can be a little bit tricky, it takes a lot of practice, is that we want to separate affirming from praise. When we praise people, it kind of sets up this power difference that you as a client can make me proud, but it also means that if you don't follow through or are not successful in a change, that I can become disappointed. And that's not the kind of relationship that we want to have with folks. We want to be collaborative. We want to be partners. We want to walk together on this change journey with them. So affirming isn't about giving praise and just being a cheerleader, because again, that can actually have some negative impacts in terms of that relationship dynamic. But affirming is just helping to identify what individual strengths are, what you see their superpowers are. So when people are working really hard at a change, you can comment on that. You can say, you've worked really hard on this. So despite the outcome, despite whether they've been successful or not, you can point out that they keep working really hard. You can also point out that maybe it's been a difficult journey and they just keep working at it, or that they've been really resourceful in gaining some supports and tools and resources that will, help them in achieving their goals. So that affirming are just helping folks to notice and be aware of the steps that they're taking, the strength that they're drawing from, which is going to just really help them in the long run.
Thanks. Reflective listening. Reflective listening describes a process by which the practitioner makes an informed guess about the meaning of what a client has shared. This helps clients think more deeply about what they are saying, which helps them continue to move forward through their ambivalence to making a behavioral change.
Yeah, so reflective listening is a huge part of motivational interviewing. We really want to strive to have as many, we actually want to strive away from questions when we can, and more to reflections. They really help to kind of mirror back what we've heard the individual say, and which also helps to strengthen the message that the individual has said. So we use reflective listening, particularly when we're hearing change talk, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But when we hear people making comments about the changes they want to make and the reasons why they want to make it and how they might go about making it, those are all kind of examples of change talk. So we want to reflect that back, so they've heard themselves say it and then they hear us say it again, and that really just helps to reinforce those positions and that information. And reflective listening at a simple level can be also kind of referred to like a paraphrasing, like kind of parroting back a little bit, what you've heard, which can be helpful in itself. But as we get stronger about using motivational interviewing, we actually want to get past what we call simple reflections and deal with what we think of more as complex reflections. And when we do complex reflections, we're not just kind of parroting back what we've heard or paraphrasing, we're wanting to add some meaning to what we're hearing. And we're kind of just taking kind of our best guess. Like sometimes we don't exactly know, but we're taking our best guess based on what we know about the client, what we have perceived. And if you make that best guess and it's wrong, that's okay, because the beauty of it is that the client will correct you and give you more information. So one of the reasons why we use reflective listening is we kind of refer to, kind of the iceberg syndrome, is like a lot of times people will kind of talk about the information that's important to them at the tip of the iceberg. There's that surface information that's pretty easy to kind of see and understand. But in order to really be able to make some meaningful change, we need to kind of dig a little deeper and try to understand their values and their beliefs and, their worldviews, what's really important to them and how that's connected to this proposed change. And as we draw those connections, it really strengthens their resolve and capacity to follow through with a plan for change. So, for example, a client might say that they want to lose weight, and so and they might talk a little bit about, we've all got those like COVID pounds that have kind of come on in the last couple of years as our lives have become a little bit more sedentary. So you might reflect back something around, how COVID has been really difficult and there's been not as much activity, and it would be really helpful now for them to think about losing a few pounds. So that would be kind of one option. But when you're doing something that's more deeper than that, or more complex than that, then you might want to say, it sounds like you're really aware of some of the health benefits that may come from losing weight, and you're at a time in your life where you'd really like to make some of those healthier changes, and losing weight is kind of one of the ways that you'd like to do that. So when in that complex reflection, you're kind of making some assumptions, you're making some guesses, and just trying to add more reasons and deepen that resolve. So complex reflections are a really important part of MI.
Thanks. Summarizing is the process of recapping to a client what the practitioner has heard him, her, they say. While reflective listening occurs in smaller bits throughout a conversation, summarizing often comes at the end of a session or a conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Summarizing is a great tool. And again, similar to reflective listening, it just reinforces the change talk that we've heard throughout the conversation. And it's also a great way. Sometimes we kind of just get stumped in conversations. The client has presented some really important information. You're feeling a bit of a loss. You're not sure where to go next. So it's a good time to sometimes just pause and say, okay, let me see if I've got this right. And then, summarizing what you've heard so far, different than reflective listening, which is, kind of point by point, but summarizing is taking the whole conversation so far and just, what are you getting from it? And then checking in to say, did I miss anything? So by doing this, again, it helps to reinforce the change talk that individuals may have raised. And it's a way of kind of catching your breath, making sure you've captured all the important pieces. And again, you don't have to be perfect at this. If you miss some important parts, as long as you end up kind of saying, how does that land for you? Or did I miss anything? Then it also gives, again, the client the opportunity to add some parts that are really important to them, which gives you some really valuable information. So summarizing, really good in terms of kind of ending a conversation or a session. It can also be really good in a slide or two. We're going to talk about some of the stages of an MI conversation. And sometimes it can be really useful to use summarizing as a tool in between those stages, and as kind of a transition point to kind of wrap up a particular part of the conversation and move to the next part. So it's an important skill, and one that takes a bit of practice, but it can be very effective.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, so I'm just going to interject for a moment. So we want to show you this clip in a moment, coming from YouTube. It's from the Modern Family show. But just before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about ambivalence. We kind of removed a slide at the last minute. I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget to have that conversation. So MI is a lot about ambivalence, and it's understanding ambivalence. And what that means is that people often feel two ways about things. And that's what makes change really hard. If change was easy, we'd all be living our most perfect and best lives. And we wouldn't need providers and therapists and social workers or, doctors to kind of tell us what we need to do. Lots of times we know what we need to do. It's really hard. And it's when you need to understand that ambivalence. So there's two ways of thinking about things. So for example, I want to get to bed early. And there's lots of good reasons for getting to bed early. I'll get more rested. I'll feel better in the morning. I'll have more energy. I'll have less bags under my eyes. Lots of good reasons to get to bed early. But you always have to be aware that there's another side of the story. So it's hard to get to bed early because I like that quiet time when all my family, when all my kids get settled into bed. I need some time to myself. I need some quiet time to kind of reflect on my day, to plan for my day for tomorrow, or just to relax and do, veg out with a show or something that's fun or relaxing. That's kind of some me time. So you have these two kind of competing needs. And with MI, we have to understand that there are two sides to every story. We talk about the myth of the unmotivated person. I think maybe we've ourselves have been in that situation, or maybe we've been with other providers or therapists who have kind of said, oh, this person's driving me crazy. They never follow through with anything. They're so unmotivated. That's just not true. What we've failed to do at that point is understand for what they are motivated. And once we kind of let go of that and seek with curiosity and respect and compassion to understand, what's important to them and kind of what's getting in their way, what are those two sides of that teeter-totter, then we can be so much more effective. And we want to hear about both sides of the story, but through the OARS, the open-ended questions, the reflections, the affirmations, and the summaries, we want to emphasize the change talk. So that's where we understand both sides, but we really focus our interventions around the change talk. So the last thing I just kind of wanted to say about ambivalence is it's kind of human nature that when you know that there's like this teeter-totter and there's two sides to the story, when we argue one side, it's kind of human nature for the other person to argue the other side. So for example, when I'm saying I want to try to get to bed early, and if Michelle said, oh, Diana, that's a really good idea. Those bags under your eyes are getting darker and darker. You should really get to bed earlier. You're tired. You don't have as much energy as you should have. Getting to bed is a really good idea. So if Michelle was coming at me like that, it's going to be my natural tendency to say, yeah, but. And those are just the magic words. That's the ambivalence at its best. Yeah, but that nighttime is my only alone time throughout the whole day. That nighttime is just so important to me to kind of reflect and relax. So even though I might be feeling like there's two sides of it, all of a sudden, because if Michelle's my provider and she's suggesting one thing, I all of a sudden start feeling stronger about the other side. So as a provider, we really want to pay attention to both sides, amplify the change talk, but being really careful not to get into a position of where we're trying to persuade or pressure or push people. Because as soon as we start doing that, we're going to get that pushback and we're going to kind of do the opposite of our intention because they're going to start arguing the other side. I just think I wish I had known this when my daughter was really little. We would go shopping and, to the dollar store or wherever, and she would get the opportunity to pick out a toy. And she was the worst decision maker. So she would kind of come up, it was always stuffed animals. She'd come up with 2 stuffed animals. And she says, Mom, I can't decide. Should I get the dog or should I get the cat? And it doesn't matter what I said. If I said, I think you should get the dog, she would always buy the cat, 100%. It was kind of this MI ambivalence at its best. So it took me a little while. I wasn't the smartest tack in the toolbox. Took me a little while to figure out it. It's just like, I don't know, dear, you decide, or better yet, to ask some questions about what does she like about each of them and help guides, ask her some questions that would kind of guide her to the decision that she's going to be happiest with. But we really need to kind of understand this ambivalence and kind of what sitting on the fence means, and how we support people in kind of understanding their choices and making the best decision for them without kind of pushing or corralling them in a way that they're not ready for or not interested in. So it's just a really important aspect about MI that we really need to understand. If we don't pay attention to both sides of that, we're kind of setting our clients up and our working relationship up for failure. So now we'll look to the video. So we're hoping this kind of works. It was a last minute addition. It's just meant to add a little bit of humor, but we're going to challenge you to kind of think about what the MI components are that you're hearing in this video clip.
Can you see it, Diana?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear it?
Maybe Michelle, could you just show the link again?
This one or the other?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So we'll just keep that up for a second if people want to make note of the link. The other thing is you could type in just to a search engine, Modern Family and Empathy 101, and you can see the clip a little bit later. Sorry for that technical difficulties. We hadn't thought to record that, to add that earlier, and so we hadn't practiced how to manage that through our technology. But it's a funny clip. It's about 4.5 minutes long, and I'll just to summarize it for a moment. What happens is, and actually I don't watch Modern Family. I really love this clip, but I don't watch Modern Family, so I don't know what everybody's names are. But the gentleman in the clip is at a nail salon and getting some treatment done with a bunch of ladies, when his wife calls him kind of frazzled because she's trying to replace a sweater. And he jumps in to offer advice to her about she shouldn't do that. She should let the girls work it out. And the women that are all with him say, no, don't do that. Because as soon as you start offering advice, it's going to just make her feel like you think you're smarter than she is. And it's just not going to be helpful. So there he has failed to resist the writing reflex. And as soon as, if you watch the clip, as soon as he's trying to offer solutions, when she didn't ask for solutions, you see her kind of get a little bit hostile and angry at him. And so then they kind of just coach him around listening and being empathic and just trying to understand. So towards later on in the clip, the girls get mad at each other, and the mom is frustrated because all her efforts to solve this problem didn't work. And where he was probably tempted to say, I told you so, I told you not to worry with that. He really just kind of empathized with her and made a comment about she worked really hard and what, too bad the girls didn't just see how much she loves them and, tried to make them happy. So in the end, she was felt super supported by her husband, and they embrace, and it was just kind of a happy ending, which if he would have stayed on course about telling her what to do and correcting her, would have just turned that difficult conversation into some hostility between the two of them. So it's a cute clip. Like I say, it's not very long. So if you get a chance, please Google it and have a little giggle, and but pay attention to the parts that are really consistent with motivational interviewing. So this next slide, we wanted just to talk a little bit about the 4 stages of a motivational interviewing process. And so this isn't meant to be linear necessarily. You can kind of go up and down and back and forth across these processes. Sometimes we really need to take our lead from our client, and we need to be flexible in terms of what they're needing or where they're at that moment. And in one session, you might get through all 4 of these processes, or you might not. You might just get through one or two steps of this. And when we think about a session can be anything. A session could be like a 2-hour meeting with somebody, or it could be a 10-minute telephone conversation. So there's lots of flexibility in this model. But the way that the conversations may flow is that we kind of start with engaging, and engaging is the time when we're really listening, where we're setting some mutual understandings about our role, how we're going to work together, where we start to build some trust and some relationship. Michelle's going to talk about this a little bit later. It might be a time where we share a bit of information about ourselves, where we just kind of get to know people and establish, a respectful and kind relationship with one another. So if we jump too fast into the problem or the change without doing that engagement, then we might lose people along the way. We really need them to feel confident in our working relationship, and that we are there to walk this journey with them. So that engagement is really critical. And if you notice different stages along the way that relationship feels shaky, then you might want to go back to some of that engagement. And the best way we can do engagement is through our reflections, just helping people know that we are hearing them, that we are understanding them, and that we are prepared to be where they are at in this process. So once we feel more confident that the relationship is fairly solid, we've got a good understanding of each other, there's some trust and respect being built, then we would move towards focusing. And what focusing is the time to identify kind of a priority topic, the area of change or greatest need. So sometimes when we have conversations with folks, there's lots going on. You kind of think about the whole kitchen sink. You check in with somebody and how's it going? Well, the kids are fighting all the time. There's some financial problems. There's some health problems. The weather's crappy. The child isn't eating very well. And you kind of made some starts on some toilet training, and that's taken some slides back because you got stressed out and busy with something else, and you lost some of that momentum. And so sometimes during the engaging process and the focusing process, we're just, where are they at? How are things going? And you're just hearing and you're understanding, and there's all these things going on. So when we're focusing, we try to kind of hone in. We're not going to be able to address all of those things today. Some of those things are not ours to address. The weather, for example, we could empathize about the weather, not something we can change. So during our focusing, we really want to kind of ask some questions about how can I be of most help to you today? Or where would you like to start? This might be a really nice opportunity between engaging and focusing, where we want to use that summarizing. So let me see if I've got this right. You have all of these concerns, and you maybe list off, summarize all the different things that you've kind of been hearing about. And it's which of those things is most important to you today? Or where would you like to start today? So that is an important focus, because it needs to be the priority that the client is bringing to the table. I might have my ideas as a provider about which one of those things we should deal with or tackle, but it's not about me. It's about what the client is needing. So focusing is kind of honing in on what's reasonable and appropriate for the time that we have today. And we might have only a 10-minute conversation today. So we might not be able to tackle that really big issue today. But then we kind of maybe do some contracting around, we've got about 10 minutes today. Is there something on that list that I can help you with today? And maybe some of those other things, we can jot them down. And when we meet again next week, we can pick up one of those, bigger topics or whatever else is kind of priority or happening for you at the time. So focusing is just making sure that you're really clear on what you're going to be working on together, that it's manageable within the time and the resources that you have at the moment, and that it's really driven by the client's needs and preferences. So once you kind of have that agreement, you kind of know what you're going to kind of work on together, or what you want to focus on or talk about, then we move into evoking. And evoking is just super important. This is about, again, enhancing the change talk, understanding more from the client about that particular topic. So if we're talking about the toilet training, for example, the toilet training was going well. Now it's gone down the toilet. We got inconsistent because we got really busy and stressed with some other things. I really need to get the toilet training back on track. So if I were going to be evoking in that kind of a conversation, then I might want to ask some questions about, okay, so what have you tried so far? Or tell me what it was working when things were going well. Or what have other people that you know that have been successful with toilet training, what do you know from them about, what was helpful? So evoking is just, what do people know about the topic? It's also, why is this important? What are the reasons why toilet training is so important to you right now? What difference is this going to make in your life, or in the life of your child, or in the life of your family? Why is this important right now? There are some scaling questions that we can ask in motivational interviewing to help evoke some of those things. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is toilet training to you and your family right now? How confident are you that you'll be able to tackle this issue? So evoking is just lots of open-ended questions, lots of reflection. So you're reflecting back some change talk, and kind of really fleshing this out so that you fully understand, and more importantly, that the client is hearing all of those important things, what they already know, what they can do, why this is so important to them right now. So once you feel like you've got a good understanding, that you've evoked a lot of great information from them, and then we move to planning. And sometimes this is the area where we can really fall short. You've probably heard the expression, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So again, change is hard, and that's why we need to follow these steps and do some really concrete planning. If it wasn't hard, the client wouldn't be bringing this issue to the table for this discussion or for your assistance. So in motivational interviewing, when we get down to planning, we want to be as concrete as possible. And because we know that change is really hard, we want to start off with really baby steps. And so sometimes when you think of what's the first step, it's often too big. And we really want people to experience some success, especially at the beginning of a change journey. So my goal might be to run a marathon. And so I might say that my first step in that, what I can start doing tomorrow, is I'm going to go out for a jog around my neighborhood. Well, if it were that easy for me to get up and go and jog around my neighborhood, I probably would have done it already. So we really want to bring that planning down to a very, very small step. So maybe my first step is finding my running shoes. Maybe that's all the first step is. Sometimes it's not even about doing something. Maybe it's just about thinking about it. Maybe between now and the next time we meet, we're just going to think about, what running a marathon is going to be like, and what you kind of need to do, and if you're ready for this. So the first step as small as possible, because you really want that person to experience some success, and then you can build on that success and add more complexity to the plan. And as we consider planning, it's not just what we're going to do, but it's also, let's be realistic and talk about what are some of the barriers, what are the things that might get in your way of this being successful. And let's talk about those things and let's plan for those things. And the last part about planning that is really critical is what's the loop back? Research shows that when there's some accountability looped in, where people have to kind of report back to somebody, kind of where they're at, then the chances of success are a lot higher. So, so it could be, once you found those running shoes, give me a call and let me know. Or even if I don't, I might be busy, but leave a message on my answer machine, because I'd really like to know, how that goes for you. And, or, let's talk about this next time and see, how this worked out for you. And when we come back next time, it's not about, did you do it or didn't you do it, or why did you do it or why didn't you do it? Those questions can be very shaming and can make people feel really uncomfortable. But if it didn't work out, it's just, what did we miss? We did some planning, but we must have missed something. So, what did we miss? What did we not consider? What do we need to do a little bit differently for this next round? So that planning is just really critical, and then looping around to it to kind of monitor, see how it's going, and adjust the plan. We have to always be prepared to adjust the plan. You guys know life gets in the way of life, and the plan might have made great sense the day that we developed it, and the very next day, all kinds of things started to happen. So we need to be prepared to kind of support the individuals to say, is this actually still a priority given everything else that's happened? If it's not the priority right now, that's okay. Let's talk about what you need now. Or if it is the priority, but things have changed, how do we tweak this plan so that it's meaningful and helpful for you?
Okay. I'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
Okay, for change talk and sustained talk. So change talk is the client making statements that are in favor of change. The goal is always to elicit and strengthen change talk from clients while softening or decreasing sustained talk. A few examples are for change talk: I want to, I'm going to, I need to, I will, I'm ready to, I should, I have to, or I could. And moving away from sustained talk, which would normally be I can't, I won't, it won't work.
Yeah, so MI is really, we talk about having our MI ears on. So when we're talking to individuals, we really want to pay attention and really want to hear any sign of change talk, any of those kinds of statements that you see on your screen and Michelle just identified. And we really want to amplify that, because that's where the power is going to come from. And again, when we talk about ambivalence, it could be, I want to do something, but it's not going to work. So you can have the change talk and the sustained talk happening at the same time. And again, our role is to emphasize the change talk and soften the sustained talk. So I was thinking about an example. So a mom might say, I want my child to start school in September. And at the same time, but I'm unsure if my child is ready for school. It might not work. So you might hear these kinds of comments. So as you're reflecting back what you're hearing or summarizing, you kind of want to soften that. And we can do that sometimes by the order that we reflect things in. So in that example, I might say, so on the one hand, you have some questions about your child going to school. And at the same time, you're quite excited about the changes that may happen when your child goes to school, and the impact that that's going to have on your child and your family. So you kind of, instead of saying like you're really scared or you're terrified or you're anxious, you just kind of soften that. You've got some questions about your child going to school. And instead of saying you want the child to go to school, which is the change talk, you're really excited. You're really looking forward to this. Like you're really kind of amplifying that, exaggerating that. And when you do the reflection, I reflected the sustained talk first. You've got some questions about this and you're really excited about this. And when you end your statement on the change talk, then the next part of the conversation is likely going to build on that. So when I say you're really excited about the changes that going to school is going to make for your child and your family, then you're likely going to hear, yeah, this is what I'm looking forward to. And now you build on that momentum and you continue to emphasize the positive part of those changes. So it's difficult, but we listen with really big ears for that change talk and find ways to reflect it back, to amplify it, to evoke more of that while paying attention to the same sustained talk, but softening it. It's there, we acknowledge it, but it's not front and center. Thanks, Michelle. So Michelle and I want to do 2 quick little role plays for you. They're not very long. We wanted just to kind of demonstrate a little bit about what MI is not. And then we'll kind of shake that off, and then we'll do a scenario, the same scenario, but in a more MI consistent way. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do these role plays is that one is that you could see it kind of pulled together a bit, which we thought would be helpful. But also MI is about practicing. And neither Michelle nor I are experts. When we attend a community practice meetings, we're all learning. And learning is about taking some risks and trying some things. So, so doing a role play in front of people is a bit of a risk, and we're not going to be perfect. so that's okay. We just want to role play what that can seem like. So so the scenario that Michelle and I wanted to talk about is the toilet training, kind of in preparation for school entry. We thought that was a common issue that comes up with many of the families that we work with. So in this scenario, Michelle is going to be the mom, and I will be the provider that's helping her with this conversation. So as we're doing this, kind of think about some of the things that we've talked about, the spirit of MI, the principles of MI, the core skills like the OARS, the open-ended questions, and just see what I do or don't do that is consistent with that in this first scenario, and then we'll switch gears and do another scenario. Okay, you good, Michelle?
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks, Michelle, for coming in today. It's nice to see you.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having time to talk to me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. What can I do for you today?
I've been starting to have troubles with potty training my daughter, and we're at an age where she needs to go to school, and she most likely won't be allowed in school if she's not fully potty trained.
Your daughter's not toilet trained yet?
No,
Oh.
I can't use what I've been doing is not working.
Oh, and she's already ready for, like, in September, she'll be going to school.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the teachers aren't going to be too keen on that, hey?
Yeah, and I'm starting to get worried and stressed out because it's summertime now, and September is going to be here soon.
Yeah, you don't really have a lot of time.
No, and I don't know how to make this quick.
Okay. Well, you know what, Michelle, I'm really glad you came to see me today and you brought this up. I've actually worked with a lot of families, and I have a lot of experience with toilet training. So I think, you know, one of the important things for you to do is I'm going to give you some resource lists. There's a couple books that I think you should go to the bookstore kind of immediately and purchase. And it's going to kind of give you some really good information about toilet training. So the time is really of the essence. You'll need to get those books really quickly, and you're really going to need to kind of prioritize reading those books, so you've got all the information that you'll need. So those books are really excellent. They've helped a lot of people, and I've been really successful in guiding people towards this, kind of this big change. So it's really critical you get on this, really right away. The other thing that's really helpful is, I would probably suggest buying some pull-ups right away instead of diapers, so that, your daughter has the experience of kind of pulling up panties. They're kind of closer to panties than the diapers. So if you haven't made that shift yet, do that right away. And Smarties, stock up on lots of Smarties. Every time your daughter successfully goes to the bathroom or talks about going to the bathroom, you're going to want to reward her with something that she likes. And who doesn't love Smarties, right? So so you know what, I suggest read those books and buy the Smarties and the pull-ups. Give that a try, and then give me a call next week and let's see how things are going.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Good luck, Michelle. You've got this.
Thanks.
Okay. So if we just want to shake that off for a minute, so that was really exaggerated. I wouldn't assume that anybody on this call would actually conduct a change conversation like that. Just kind of really wanted to exaggerate some of those pieces. A couple things I wanted to point out that me in this role of provider at this time, I didn't mean to be harsh. And we'll hear a little bit from Michelle in terms of how that felt as from a client perspective. I may have meant well. I may have been really well-meaning. I may have lots of knowledge, lots of experience with this, and I really genuinely wanted to help Michelle and her family with this. I just didn't choose a communication style that was going to be very helpful to her. So it's not always about intent, but it's about having the right skills to be able to guide people. So Michelle, just as the mom in that situation, how did that feel to you?
The first part felt very judgy, like she's not ready yet. Kind of how it felt like the practitioner would be putting blame on the parent. And then overwhelming with being told a list of what I need to do, and to have a week to do it would be overwhelming. So, and not very understanding and asking where I'm at with it, not questioning what has working or what has worked or what hasn't been working. Made me feel like there was only a way to tackle this, and it would be your way. So
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So how successful do you think this plan is going to be?
Not very successful, especially if you're telling people to go, young moms to go to a bookstore and get a bunch of books. I doubt that would be that successful.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And you know what thanks, Liz. Thanks, Michelle. So that was great feedback from a mom in that non-MI consistent scenario. So now we just want to shift gears a little bit. And again, I'm going to ask each of you to kind of think about some of the things that we've talked about, the principles and the spirit, and how this MI consistent approach makes a bit of a difference. So we're going to do the same scenario. So we'll shake that off. So hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for coming in to see me today. How are you?
Hi, thanks. I'm good.
Good, good. So what brings you by today?
I've been looking around for help to see if I can get some advice, or if just some general information on how to potty train my 4-year-old, as I want to prepare her for school.
Okay. So your daughter's getting to the age that you're thinking about school.
Yeah. I just want to make sure she's ready and that she has a good time and that she's successful. So I want to work towards that.
Okay. So you're really committed to trying to get her as prepared as you can, so that her transition, like going to school, is a big transition, and you just want her to be ready so that is kind of a smooth transition and goes as successfully as possible.
Yeah, and I was told if she's not potty trained. She can't go to school. So if she's not in school, I don't know what to do.
Okay. So you have some real worries about what might happen if she's not toilet trained. But at the same time, you're really committed to supporting her and becoming toilet trained so that she can go to school and have that really positive experience with her peers.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So have you tried to toilet train her in the past?
I have, and I just don't have the time in the day to do it all the time, and it's just easier if I put a pamper on her, and I just haven't had luck.
Okay. So it's easier to keep the diaper on her because you're busy and that way there's no accidents happening in the house. And on the other side, you know that it takes this time and this effort and really consistency to kind of stick at it in order for it to be successful.
Yeah, I guess I really don't know, and I was told that if I were to come here, you would help me.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to guide you through this. And we can maybe come up with a plan together that'll be most helpful for you. When the toilet training is working at home, what does that look like? What are you guys doing? What are you and your daughter doing when the toilet training is being successful?
She'll let me know if she needs to use the bathroom, and so far, once in a while, we'll make it in time, but there's times where she doesn't tell me, so I don't know that she's gone. She won't tell me.
Okay. So there's times, so she has the capacity. There's times when she notices that she has to use the washroom and she's letting you know. Okay.
But then I also don't have help. It's just me.
Okay. So it's overwhelming at times to think about managing everything that you have to manage and pay attention to this issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how important is toilet training to you and your family?
I'd say it's important just because the prices have gone up and diapers are very expensive.
Okay. So not only do you want her to be successful at school and becoming toilet training, it'd be really helpful to you to have her toilet trained because you'll save some money because you won't have to pay for the diapers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to cut our conversation short only because I think we could go on and on, but hoping that that's a bit of a demonstration about some engagement, some evoking, some focusing, and kind of moving towards a much more positive kind of conversation. So Michelle, as the mom, how did that one feel compared to the first one?
It's better. Like, I felt like given more time, it could have been, I felt supported. So I feel like if I felt supported, then maybe more, I would have been more able to pick out, let's say, once a baby step, right? One step at a time scenario.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Michelle has a couple more slides to talk in terms of the cultural safety piece. So we'll let her run through these and then we'll open for questions.
Yeah, sorry. So MI as a cross-cultural practice, just to give a bit of a background information, Diana and I were part of a podcast for motivational interviewing, and the question came up of cross-cultural MI practices. Is it culturally relevant and safe to always consider culture? And that was one question that we had, and a really interesting discussion that everyone was a part of. So basically, we all agreed that it is important to always consider culture in different practices and scenarios and approaches. For MI, the appeal of MI as a communication method can be used in various cultures, maybe due to its focus on the recognition and utilization of the values, goals, and strengths, strategies of the client. In order for it to be effective cross-culturally, practitioners should one, be mindful of clients on an individual basis and not make assumptions that all clients are from a certain group are the same. 2, practice dynamic sizing and knowing when to apply knowledgeable culture without stereotyping and when to frame what we are seeing or hearing as individuals to clients. And 3, have culturally specific knowledge about the population culture where the clients are from, whether it's racial, ethnic, geographical, physical, or sexual orientation. What I wanted to discuss a little bit was to focus on Indigenous perspectives and motivational interviewing. I wanted to share the medicine wheel as I love using it as a framework. So it incorporates various aspects of not just a person individually, but as communities, as nations. And the traditional medicine wheel symbolizes balance and interconnection. It can serve as a framework for improving the mental well-being of First Nations people. In Manitoba, I use this because that's where the reference was for. So just quickly looking at the medicine wheel, we're looking at different aspects of elders, the family, spirituality, traditional teachings, medicine, sharing activities, and identity. Again, this is for mental health framework, looking at the community, meaning of purpose, history and stories, and belonging. And for the individual, taking into account the emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. And if if they are all focused all together, then that represents feeling and living a balanced life. So for culture cannot be reduced to something singular or static, is variegated and evolving, and people identify with their cultures to varying degrees or have intersecting identities. It is important to remember that individuals are situated within families, communities, nations, and the larger society, all of which shape individual level beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. So just remembering when working within Indigenous families, communities, they're not all going to be the same. People take into culture different ways, but to be respectful and mindful of that is going to be helpful, especially when using motivational interviewing. Using MI across cultures, I have a few examples I wanted to go through. Before I go, I wanted to just quickly look at this diagram to signify what imbalance with harmony and recovery would look like. I got this from Motivational Interviewing, Enhancing Motivation for Change, a Learner's Manual for the American Indian Alaska Native Counselor. So it is a bit about working with motivational interviewing with addictions. And then out of balance, you see the medicine wheel is wonky. It's not, it just represents out of balance where substance abuse, mental health problems, and illness. I really like that image, just kind of like give a visual representation of ambivalence, conflicting feelings, thoughts, or actions. So when using MI across cultures, it's important to inquire about ethnic background. For example, identity, language, spirituality, and ties to the community. This is with being curious, as Diana mentioned, getting a bit of a background, more information when with having conversations with clients. With using MI across cultures, be prepared to share information about yourself, your family, and where you come from. This self-disclosure can build trust. There are times in MI that it's stated not to self-disclose any information, but especially if you're Indigenous and you're working with other Indigenous families or clients, it is important to share, and it's somewhat expected to share where you may come from, who your family is, and that's part of the building trust. Avoid stereotypes, acknowledging historical traumas and losses, including racism and discrimination. Just knowing that Indigenous people have a very traumatic experience with colonialism, there may be more to someone's story when it comes to dealing with such losses such as residential schooling and the 60s scoop. Exhibit greater cultural competence about celebrations, ceremonies, and traditions. I feel like at Sky Center, we're doing a great job with that, being curious and also being available and ready to partake in celebrations and ceremonies and traditions. It's not a closed society at all times. It's Indigenous people are very happy and welcoming if people come with a respectful manner and wanting to learn more about cultural and traditions. For yourself to reflect on any biases you may have or come into a situation. Also going into communities, focusing on strengths is important. Using humor if comfortable and appropriate. I wanted to say not to come in and crack jokes, but if someone is saying a joke or telling a funny story, it is nice to have a practitioner or someone in the conversation laugh with them. With myself, I feel comfortable if someone says, "Oh, that's funny." You know, it's not always a clinical setting where you have the expert and the client, and I feel humor kind of breaks the ice for a lot of people. So acknowledging that is important. Also acknowledging metaphors, myths, and storytelling. Some people might use their own storytelling as a form of sharing. They might tell another story that they learned, which would be a form of sharing. So just really sitting there and listening, using reflective listening and knowing that it's important. Some people use storytelling to share and when they're building relationships. And acknowledging dreams or visions. It's important to know that Indigenous people do have a connection with dreams, visions. It's part of our ceremonies. It's part of our culture. And if someone is telling you about a dream, take it as very important information. It could be very enlightening. It can be insightful for practitioners or part of the conversation if someone is acknowledging that. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Next step.
Michelle. Perfect. So again, we just wanted to pique your interest on these topics. There are lots of books, videos, podcasts, Facebook pages. There's a really great, if you Google Merlot, the effective physician and the ineffective physician, you'll see another great scenario of what MI does look like and what it does not look like. We do have a monthly community of practice for Sky Center providers. Liz has put herself as a contact person. You can also reach out to me directly if that's helpful. Shared Health LMS has human behavior change parts 1, 2, and 3, which are very MI consistent. And just encourage people, keep your eyes out for training opportunities with MINT trainers. Again, we're just people who are kind of passionate about communication and this style of communication. But MINT trainers would do a more thorough job of helping you understand these concepts. And now we're ready for questions. And I again apologize for taking us so late. Thank you for those who were able to hang in there with us.